Kings Island announced pass perks several years ago, and we haven't seen a lot of motion on it, but that's all changed now. Hello, everybody. Alongside Don Helbig, I'm Ryan Sir, and this is Tower Topics.
Tower Tops is a podcast by Kings Island fans for Kings Island fans because that's who we are and that's who we care about.
So, Don, dare I say hell is frozen over? We're actually seeing movement on pass perks.
Yeah, it's nice to see. I mean, there's been a lot of work on that at the corporate level, trying to get this program really moving in the right direction. And it looks like, for the first time in several years, that it might be ready to really roll out and in a way that actually means something for the pass holders.
Right. And what we mean is that people now are reporting, especially online, that they're actually seeing the incentive structure for pass perks in the app when you log in and have your season pass loaded up. So we're going to take a look at a couple of these things. So we're gonna try to dictate what we're looking at here for the audio listeners, but it looks like if they're going to have a lucky drawing bonus perk. So you have like every time you visit, you're entered into a drawing. Each visit you will log in. Each visit you log in May counts as an entry for you to win a mystery bonus perk. Your chances of winning increase the more you visit. I guess your chances of winning increase the less other people visit too, but they didn't put that disclosure on there. That's interesting. What do you think the mystery bonus perk would be?
I don't know. What I think would be kind of cool as a perk would be, that one time front of the line pass for any ride that you want to do in the park would be kind of a cool perk.
That's true. But at the same time, you have to remember the balance, because the person who wins this may also have a prestige pass where they get one of those every visit too. Now, granted, they'll have two instead of one, of course. But it's I mean, I remember you guys always had like Beast backstage tours and stuff like that. I don't know if that's the direction they're going to go with this, but it is very interesting. And I'm going to, obviously there are things that need to be developed with this program, but I'm going to point out the stuff that's positive that I see. And this is the kind of stuff that I do like, because if somebody visits the park, especially if they visit the park regularly, this does create an incentive structure to continue to visit. So this right here, starting off strong, because this does accomplish their goal. All right. So if you visit twice, $2 off Auntie Anne's pretzel. Okay. I guess we'll go ahead and couple that along with if you visit 3 times, you get $3 off fresh cut fries. So
now that would encourage me to visit 3 times, because those fresh cut fries are amazing.
But you're running into a different problem here, though, because you can get Rivertown Potato Works on the meal plan.
You can, but if you don't have the meal plan, this is a great deal for you.
What percentage of season pass holders do you think wouldn't have the meal plan? I think it's higher than we would imagine. Now, with that being said, Auntie Anne's is not on the meal plan. So $2 off, it's not a whole lot, because Auntie Anne's is expensive in or out of the park, but $2 off is a good incentive. But all it takes is to visit twice to get that. Now, the program, we're going to go on because there are prestige only benefits for that enhanced pass perks that we've been talking about. But this is kind of the problem here. After 3 visits, does the program terminate? Or, I mean, it could be that somebody sent me these screen caps, but if anybody's looking through the app and they see they've got 5 visits, 10 visits, and so on. Because I remember back with the pass perks, my problem was that I spent so much money. I mean, this was before meal plans and everything, but I spent so much money at the park and visited the park so often that I maxed it out. I got a bring a friend ticket. I got free Fastlane, all that stuff by the end of May. So is this incentive structure simply designed around the people that would only visit a handful of times to try to get them to visit more? Or do you think that it's built out more than that?
Well, I think it's to get the pass holder to visit more, because the majority of pass holders, the average pass holder is going to visit, 3 or 4 times a year. There are those guests that do visit, 10 times, 15 times. Some visit almost every single day.
Right.
But that's the minority. The majority of the pass holders, if they can visit 3 or 4 times, you get them to visit that 5th or 6th time, this is really what this program is designed, is to get those extra 2 or 3 visits out of guests that you normally wouldn't have.
Yes, and two of the three. I like obviously we don't know what the mystery bonus is. And the mystery bonus, for all we know, could be buy one get one ice cream or something like that, which would kind of be a disappointment. But both of these are encouraging spending in the park too. So that's another plus because that does help. Between the two of these things, the more you visit, the more you're under this drawing. And then as you visit, you get discounts with spent, high perceived value, low cost items, as our friend David would say. So it does encourage spending too. So I think that's cool. I think that there's a lot more build out that needs to be done with the program. But from what I'm seeing here, this kind of does have the design that I was looking for in this program. Now, comparing it to Fun Perks, though, the only thing that this doesn't have, and this is both a good and a bad thing, is Fun Perks had this element of mystery where when you knew how far you had to go to hit a milestone, and then when you hit the milestone, it would unlock more prizes, but you didn't know what the prizes were. So it was kind of like part of it was, man, I want to visit the park one more time this week to see what level 4 gets me. You don't have that with this, but I'm almost wondering if that would be really tough to design in today's world.
This is cleaner. I think everybody
Yeah.
knows what you can achieve by visiting the park.
Yeah, and all this can do from the actual loyalty program standpoint is drive attendance. Because the other program, you got more points for spending money, but I think they know what they have now with a lot of people on the meal plans and stuff where uh, they can encourage you to spend money outside of the meal plan. And again, like if they want to give me $3 off of something at Sweet Spot or whatever, like that's a good prize, because that's not on the meal plan and it's something I might want. So yeah, I like what I see here. And it really I've complained and whined and said stuff and whatever about pass perks for years because it was always that unicorn. It was always something that they said was coming soon for 3 years, 5 years, or whatever. But now we finally look like we have something. Now, moving on, we're talking about prestige pass holders at this point. They did load up some prestige pass things. So with the prestige, you visit 3 times, you get $4 off a large Dippin' Dots. Now, a large Dippin' Dots is like $12. It's insanely priced, but at the same time, $4 off is not a little bit off of $12. That's a pretty good deal. Um, Visit 4 times, and you get an extra 15% off merchandise and 15% off games. So they're saying extra, so I can only assume that this is like stacked, right? So you get 15% off with prestige, so you get a total of 30% off. Is that correct? Is that the way you're reading it?
That's the way I would read it, because you do, like you said, you do get that discount just because you're a prestige pass holder, and it says an extra 15% off.
I
So
would hope
that's
that
a good deal too. That is a really good deal.
that's a fantastic deal. And I'm telling you this, there's a big difference between 15 and 20%, let alone 30, because when I go to Disney, my pass gets me 20% off, and that's like a pretty good amount. It makes me feel good. The 10% off with the gold pass kind of takes care of taxes. This is actually like a good chunk out of it. So I don't know if people would spend enough to offset the price of the prestige pass, but at least it's not nothing. Okay, I want to backpedal with that. I don't want to say at least it's not nothing to try to put it down. I think 30% off is an incredibly generous deal. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, it looks good, and I like seeing it out there and having it posted that the prestige pass, your highest pass level, that the deal's better for you than it is for the other pass
As it
levels.
should be, as it absolutely should be. Now, moving on, the final prestige pass perk that we know about is you visit twice and you get $2 off a warm pretzel. Now, this is in contrast to $2 off an Auntie Anne's pretzel for the regular people, but a warm pretzel, I think, is one from the carts at Kings Island, and Auntie Anne's is very specifically the two Auntie Anne's locations, if I'm not wrong about that.
Now, what do you get off a cold pretzel?
Um, you get cold pretzels for free in the VIP lounge, I believe. But that's all the information that we have so far. But I will say that that's a good start. It's certainly not done. If they go to this point and just stop, then obviously it's going to be a big disappointment, and we can't be overly surprised if that's what happens. But when we talk about loyalty programs, and we do have an attractions group podcast episode about loyalty programs, they're intended to drive attendance and to drive in park per capita spending, and I feel like this is designed to do that. So the next question is, what took so long? Uh,
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It has been something that, every year was, you know, the new Pass Perks program. Make sure that, you're signed up, you download the app, all those kind of things, and nothing ever really came about it. Or a lot of guests would visit 20, 30 times and not see anything. Another guest would visit 3 times and receive something. So there was a lot of, issues with the program that way. But this
yeah,
looks like, it's finally on track, and it looks good. It looks like, where it should be for this loyalty program. And it's exciting to see, where it's at right now. And it's encouraging what it might be, as you get deeper into the season, some of the other, things that are going to come about the more you visit. Because it should be one of those things with loyalty programs. It should be the more you do visit, the more you get. And if you are going 30 times, you should receive more than the guest that comes 2 or 3 times.
right. Yeah, and that's the damned if you do, damned if you don't about loyalty programs, because if I visit 30 times and I get little to nothing, and you visit twice and you get really good incentives, if I find out about that, that's really upsetting. But from a marketing standpoint, it makes perfect sense because you're trying to entice the person that comes twice to come more often.
To come more often, correct. But no, it's
Well,
good. And it's something that, you and I have talked about this, for years, about the Pass Perks, Fun Perks, whatever that loyalty program that they were calling it, each of the years. And, you're always skeptical about, what it was going to end up being, if it was going to follow through and be what was being, pushed out there. But for the first time, I think this, looks like, yeah, it's in place. It's ready to go.
yeah, and I've got a history in the loyalty program industry, shall we say. So I'm going to be watching this very closely, and we'll probably not do just one episode about pass perks. I think we'll probably every month or every time there's development talk about what we see and how it affects us, and how we're talking to other people what they think about it and so on. Along with the app too. I was at work today, and people were taught, somebody downloaded the new app or opened up the app for some reason, and they were like, "Oh, it's different." And, that's they were kind of excited about that. So very, very cool.
Yeah, major improvements with the app.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to. I've been kind of holding my tongue about the app because I don't want to know, or I don't want to make a judgment until I'm in the park when I'm actually using it. But it looks a lot better, so we have that going for us. But
Yeah, very easy to
functionality within the
navigate.
park, yes, I agree. What else would you offer as incentives in this program if you were going to add like 5 visits, 10 visits, stuff like that?
Well, I mean, you do want to see that in park spending, but I don't think everything can be geared to asking the guest to open their wallet for something, especially, if it is going to be all like food related and you have the dining plan, as you mentioned earlier. That's not going to be real value to you, to get that $3 off the fresh cut fries, because you have the dining plan, you can get it with that. So I would think some other things, you talked about, behind the scenes tour, of a ride. A lot of guests would love to do that, just never have that opportunity. I think the discounts on merchandise,
Hmm.
do more of that. That's of value to guests, because there's not uh, a plan that you can do for merchandise. You get your discount on the pass, but that's it. So I think the more things you can do with that, the better. And for the park, if you can drive somebody into the store because they're going to get that extra 10%, 15% off, you know, that might be the only time, the incentive they need to walk into the stores, because a lot of guests, they don't go into the stores. So I think things like that would be good for the park. I think it'd be good for the guests to be able to check out the merchandise. Priority seating at a show,
Sure.
those kind of things would be good. Um, priority. place for the Grand Carnival parade.
Mhm.
You know, just things like that I think would be kind of a nice touch. Just experiences, because everybody, the possessions are nice, but people like experiences too.
I was
So
thinking, something that would be kinda cool would be if they had something like, toward the end of September, not the end, like the beginning of September, like toward the end of daily operations, have like a dinner or a breakfast or something like that in the Fest House where, like, Mike Kuntz would speak or something like that, and it would
town hall
be
meeting kind of thing.
well, right, so they could do like a Q&A kinda thing or whatever, but serve food and stuff like that, but even if it has to be like, you're invited to go to this, but it's 29.95 or whatever, make it so it's, like, reasonably priced, but it's an experience that people would wanna have,
Hmm.
so I
And I
'cause
think
I
people would want to have that. I've had a number of people over the years that have asked why the park doesn't do those kind of things where there's, you're into the theater and uh, the general manager comes out and talks about what's new or just different things about the park. I think that would be a great thing to add to this program. Would be those kind
yeah,
of rewards.
yeah, and here's the thing, like, when when the park gives me more opportunities to spend money, I actually appreciate that because that means there are more experiences available, and I've got a lot of disposable income, so I choose to spend it at the park. So, on one hand, if I've got to earn the ability to go by visiting 50 times and then I buy a ticket to go, uh, that would be fine so long as they don't like we were turned off this year by the New Year's Eve thing because the price went up like substantially. And it was almost like, I mean, we could afford it, but me and like all my friends who've done it for years were like, this is insulting. So don't make it so you have to visit 50 times and you can buy $129 ticket, Don't make it like that. Make it so the hard part is earning the ability to buy a ticket and then make the ticket 29.99. Make money on it, but you don't have to bend people over with it. So what I want you to do is leave a comment if you're listening to this or tweet at us at tower_topics. What kind of incentives would you like to see with the Pass Perks program? I'd love to hear your opinion. We'll share some of them on the air at some point because again, we're going to circle back to this. Okay. So, Don, do you have any final thoughts about this?
As someone that's going to have a season pass, I'm excited to see the program, what they're rolling out and seeing where it can go.
I completely agree. Okay, let's move on to the listener question. This one's coming from Ashley Woods. She says, imagine that Vertigo is gone. I don't like how this question is starting. What coaster/ride would you put in its place, especially since it would be the first thing you see when you arrive at KI? And I think that would be a huge consideration, is that you talk about changing the skyline of the park. Even if they put Snoopy Soapbox Racers up there, it would look like it was the size of Orion. Have you ever thought about that?
Yeah, I mean, that location, I think that would dictate the type of ride that you'd want to put there. You don't want to have something that's, you know, it's not a place for a flat ride. It's got to be a coaster, right? To go
Gotta
in that
be.
spot. It's got to be something that's becomes part of your skyline as, people are driving up and down Interstate 71 past the park. So to me, because of the location, I would go dive coaster there.
I would go Wing Coaster there.
Wing coaster,
Because
okay.
because Wing Coaster is, visually speaking, the most imposing, because it's physically a large ride. It doesn't have to be like another Giga or anything like that, but it's physically a large ride with a wide track and huge trains. So that would be the most imposing possible thing. I was thinking dive coaster too, but you'd have to really be considerate of the actual dive elements because you want to make sure that they're visible from the road, but they're also not obscured in the park too. That was what kind of turned me away from the dive coaster.
Yeah, we're also looking at space. You know,
Mhm.
I mentioned taking out in Vertigo. It didn't talk about knocking out other rides that you might have to do to create a dive coaster there, Ryan.
Right, it would be in Vertigo, Congo, and Timberwolf, which one day
Okay.
will happen, I imagine, you know? I wouldn't
Okay.
go over
No,
the I
I
would
like the wing. I do like the wing coaster idea there. I think you're right. I mean, that would be imposing. It would look impressive. Uh, as you're driving by the park and you see a wing coaster. I mean, it catches your attention for sure. Um, but I just, for me, I would go dive, and I can understand why you would say wing. I think either of those would be really good coasters to go in that spot if Invertigo wasn't there anymore.
And if they took out Congo and Timberwolf, they could probably leave in Vertigo there, to be honest with you. Um, yeah, great question. All right, thanks, Ashley. Hopefully, Invertigo's here to stay though, because I honestly, truthfully, honestly love that ride.
Yeah, those are
So,
hard questions when people ask us if this ride went away, what would you replace it with? Because we don't like to see any ride go.
well, her question was unique in the fact that it
Oh,
is
it's
in
a
the
very
front of the
unique ride.
park,
Great
you
question. Yeah,
know.
great question.
So,
And
so I
it's
thought it was because you don't very we made the argument for dive coasters like in the vortex spot where it's kind of like whether you like dive coasters or not, you got to submit to the fact that that photo that you lost of like that batwing corkscrew you gain back with a dive coming down and it's right in front of the midway and stuff. So
well, that's because of the topography in that area. That's
right.
where a dive or a wing coaster would work really well in the vortex spot, where it's more flat, where Vertigo is. I think that works better with flat land for a dive coaster than it would for a wing coaster. I think you want to use some topography in that with a wing coaster.
I'd be concerned with space if you put a wing coaster in the vortex spot.
Yeah, there's a lot more room there than you would think. If you're down there walking around through that area, I mean, there's a lot more room.
No, it's several acres, but I don't want more trees around the beast cut down, which would probably end up happening. That's why I'm kind of rooting for like a mock extreme spinner or something that's a little bit more compact potentially. Um, because if we got your dive coaster, I mean that's going to be the same situation, and I just there's a lot of charm to having trees around the park and stuff, and it gets very roller coaster tycoonish when there's not. So anyway, Ashley, thank you so much for your questions. Hey, I'm Ryan Sir along with Don Helbig, and this is Tower Topics.